Welcome to the Cashflow Project podcast. Are you looking to better your financial situation by increasing your cash flow? Too busy to hunt for real estate deals or don't know where to start? Then you're in the right spot. Join us as we dive in and talk about investing for cash flow using multifamily real estate.
Welcome to the Cashflow Project. I'm your host, Vince Gethings with Tri-City Equity Group. And today on the show, we have Justin Wawrzyniak on the show. Justin was once a highly recruited engineer, but left to become a full-time real estate investor and cash flow cowboy at the age of 25. With over $1 million in equity and $130,000 in wholesale profits in the last 2 years, Justin is an expert at finding off-market and direct-to-seller deals and is on the journey to 300 units by 30 years old. Justin, welcome to the show.
Appreciate it, Vince. Good to see you again.
Yep, you too. It's been all of a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
but it's been great.
Last meetup.
So did I butcher your name or did I get it right?
You actually nailed it. A lot of people, I'll have to send the how to say this, but you nailed it. Yeah, it's.
I would say I'm, just a genius, but I definitely went to YouTube. And
there it is.
And I was like,
go. So you did the work
and watched a couple of your videos. And I was like, I got to get this right.
And that's why you stand above everyone else, is because you do what it takes to get it.
Well, I try. Well, I listened to that Dale Carnegie book, right? How to Influence and Influence People. And there's a chapter in there where he's like, a person's name is the most beautiful sound in any language. And so try to make it a point not to, mess up somebody's name.
That's incredible. Yeah, one of my favorite books, actually. And that was one of the biggest things that jumped out in that book was like, just call people by their names and you're like immediately liked. Like, oh, okay. Sounds good.
Absolutely. Well, let's get into it. So I guess let's tell us a little bit about yourself and we'll see where that takes us.
Yeah. So I am 28, just turned 28 not too long ago. About 2 or 3 weeks, probably last time we saw each other was around my birthday time. But I come from a W-2 corporate America family, right? So my dad was an engineer, his dad was an engineer, and then my mom was on kind of the medicine side. And they taught me how to be a great, college student, how to go get a nice, safe, secure job, and then go work forever and then eventually retire and not really have enough time at the end of your life to enjoy it. So that was what I was taught. And very quickly on, I left corporate America at 25. So it was about 2 years where I was like, okay, I don't want to do this. Right. And I think a lot of people end up catching that financial independence, financial freedom bug. And that's what I went after. So that's why I transitioned towards real estate, because we've all heard it a million times. And, a million is what I'm referencing here is like the most millionaires are made through real estate. So it's a great investment vehicle. Right. And so I dove into it. It was a little crazy at the time, calling my parents, letting them know, hey, I'm leaving. I'm going to go all in on real estate, become a full-time investor and a cash flow cowboy as well. They thought I was ridiculous, which, looking back, I probably was. I would probably suggest for other people to get the passive income to replace the salary before, or at least close before you actually make that transition. But I was young. I didn't have at the time a wife, didn't have kids, nothing really holding me back from taking a quote unquote risk. And I felt like it was calculated enough, and that's what I did. So last 2 years have been great. We've been purchasing multifamily properties, 10 to 100 units, BC class stuff, value add, and been going to a ton of meetups. That's where we met officially in person. I had connected actually with your partner Duke at a online event, right? Virtual event. And so, along those, just being surrounded with the right people has really helped kind of scale the portfolio faster than your average Joe.
No, love it. Lots of stuff there. But first one, coming from the, I guess you said corporate background or more traditional background, go to college, get really good, marketable skills, and then and go get a solid, high paying job. So what caused you to get out, to distract you from that? What was the thing that caught your eye, that first moment of just wait a second, there might be something more? Because a lot of people never get there. It's or they get there, but they never take any action. They just they keep the blinders on, say, no, this is what I'm going to do. So what was the first thing that caught your eye that there may be something different or better than this? And then what was that first action step you took?
Yeah, I think there's always kind of like a moment, but the moment is just like a spark, right? I think a lot of people felt that spark when they read Rich Dad Poor Dad, for instance, right? It's a book that a lot of people, and there's a ton of people that have read that book that have, they're still doing their job or whatever, and they didn't actually take any action from it. So what I like to kind of tell people is like, read up front, but then there does need to be that action step, right? You can consume as much podcasts as you want, but or read as much books as you want, but if you don't do anything about it, it's not really going to change your life. So reading that was like, all right, I really want to do this. How do I do this? And what happened at that point is you have to start surrounding yourself, I guess, with people that are doing it, because for a couple of reasons, right? Vince, you have to. One, you need to learn from them, right? You don't want to be learning real estate from someone who, doesn't own any properties or, maybe doesn't know what they're talking about, right? So that's a terrible teacher. So that's step number one, is you want to be around people who are doing it. People that are more successful than you is the ideal situation, coaches and whatnot. And then it also encourages you and holds you accountable. So you can read the book. You can, listen to a podcast and be like, wow, I really want to get into multifamily investing. And then you personally are excited about it. But if those around you are not, you're going to your energy for it, your desire to do it, the day-to-day life is just going to creep in. And next thing you know, you wake up in a year and you did nothing. Right. Mm-hmm. So for me, that was important to surround myself with the right people once getting the spark started. And that was just, mentors and stuff like that who have, hundreds and thousands of apartment building units.
When you told your family that this is what you wanted to do, how supportive, I'm sure they were just like, oh, that's stupid. Or maybe, he'll buy one or two rental properties on the side kind of thing. But, how supportive were they on you? And you're like, yeah, I'm just quitting all this and doing this other thing and burning the ships and everything. Like,
they're never going to be fully on board because they don't understand. Right. So, I put out a hilarious video about it and actually got like a ton of views, but like the main concept of it is like, stop listening to your family. Like you love them, they love you, but if you're going to listen to what they're telling you to do, then you're going to end up exactly like them. And, that's the harsh reality of it. So, what I did was I essentially told them what I was going to do and then just let them deal with it. And so they haven't bought any apartment buildings. They haven't invested in real estate. They haven't, they're working 9-to-5 jobs, just nonstop, waiting essentially, it's going to sound harsh, but essentially waiting to get replaced by someone out of college who's half their salary or whatever it may be. And, they're out of luck. Right. So I have to tell them I don't want to do that. I want to do something different. And as a result, their opinions can't hold any weight when it comes to business and finance, right? I can't do that because the flip side of it is they're your family. So they know who you were. So they can't fathom you changing, right? They look at you a certain way, right? You're their baby boy, baby girl, whatever it may be, right? And then the other thing is that they will project their fears and insecurities about real estate and growth. And they just don't want to see you fail. They literally love you so much that they don't want to see you fail. So their negative opinions towards you going out and doing something new or chasing your dreams or whatever is going to come across as negative, but it's really just a reflection of they're so scared of you failing. But if you just listen to them, you won't ever fail, but you also won't ever grow. And what's the fun in that? Life is meant to go out there and take risks and grow and adapt and then become better for it.
Beautifully said. And I do, I teach that exact same thing. I use that when was it Nipsey Hussle quote? Like if you look at the people around you and they're not supporting you and they're not uplifting you, then you don't got a circle, you got a cage. I use that analogy a lot. And I like that one better than the 5 people you surround yourself with, or the average, because I think the cage is a lot more applicable to what is really happening mentally when you look at the exact thing you said. With your family, they love you so much that they'll like convince you to not take any risks at all. And then your friends, they want you around so much and they don't want you to outgrow them that they'll convince you that it's a bad idea and that's stupid too. And then so you get these two groups of people that they're not doing it like maliciously, but they're holding you down just the same from growing and going out and trying to do these things.
And that's also on the flip side is like when you connect with someone who has that same growth mentality and you end up like partnering or whatever, working together, whatever, it's like lightning in a bottle, like you take off, rocket ship type stuff. So it can be both ways. And you mentioned, right, I like the cage as well, because if I look at like, who do I spend a lot of my time with? My fiance is someone that I spend a lot of my time with. She's on her way to be a doctor. Like she's not telling me, we're not talking about real estate necessarily, but the support is there. And I think the people around you, if they're supporting you going after whatever it may be, is always a good thing. They're not a cage. They're whatever you mentioned, they're uplifting at that point. Yep,
absolutely. And that's, we can do a whole show on that.
Yeah.
I don't want to go that direction, but yeah, family support, like you said, your spouse is extremely important, because the stress in this game is something else. So you definitely need to have somebody to kind of keep you there. So you mentioned earlier that you jump ship early, and I don't know where you're doing your engineering at, but you jump ship early. And you mentioned advising people to probably maybe not do that, or maybe think about it a little bit more, to have that W-2, replaced before you jump ship. So what was that? And what did you do, and what could you have done differently, or advised differently?
Yeah, if someone wants to model kind of what I did, essentially I did a few steps. One was read Rich Dad Poor Dad, or just, consume content, right? That's going to be number one. You start consuming content, and then this is like the normal path of growth, right? You consume content, you're excited, but you don't really know how to direct that excitement. Then what I did was I started going to local meetups for multifamily. And I started doing this before I had even left my engineering job. This was back, I really didn't know much besides, Bigger Pockets, education and some books and some podcasts and stuff like that. And that was huge because that was, you're going to love this. You see people that are doing what you want to do. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you look at them and you go, if that guy is doing it, what's stopping me from doing it? Right. It sounds kind of bad, but like, it's an encouragement of like, oh, there's not necessarily anything special about the people that are doing real estate and especially at a high level investments, other than maybe like, discipline or consistency. And right. And that can be systematized if you really want to. So that was important to me. But like, as far as like timing of when to leave a corporate America job, I think everyone wants that financial freedom. For me, at that time, 25 years old, I had very low expenses, right? And I had a house hack, right? That was my first investment property, was a house hack. So I essentially had free house. My housing was paid for. So I knew that if I'm leaving, all I really got to cover is food, right? And I'm a couple of years out of college. I can keep eating ramen noodles if I need to, right? We're going to be all right. So because I did it early on when expenses were low, it helped me make that transition. Right now, let's say you're in your 40s or 50s, and you just came across real estate, and it's the investment vehicle you want to go into. Maybe you have a family, maybe you have kids, they're going to college and stuff like that. You probably need to start investing on the side, use it as a side hustle until the income, the passive income, whatever it may be from those properties grows to where you feel comfortable making that jump, right? You can still feed your family and, provide for your family. So that's what I'd have to say about it. It's unique to your situation. But it does help being younger, I would say, to make that transition, because it's almost like I was starting a career initially as a real estate investor rather than, a second career.
Love it. All right. No, that's awesome. I agree with you there. If you jump on the journey early enough in your life, like you said, you were young 20s, mid 20s, you're not really losing a whole lot of time to jump in. So you're pretty much like starting, a career. You did a couple year detour, and let's face it, most people in America don't really even start getting serious about like adulthood until their 30s anyway, these days. So I don't think you lost any amount of time. I used to be on the bandwagon of you have to burn the ships in order to to get enough, I guess, fear that you have to succeed. And then as I mature, and then especially as I became a coach, I realized that that's probably not the best advice for everybody. So now I take a completely different stance on those two things. I'll listen to their story, and I kind of will evaluate, their age is one thing, if they're 50 years old or something like that, and they're just starting getting into real estate, I probably won't advise them to burn the ships. And when they got kids to feed and things like that. But if they're young, then I will kind of tailor to that. So now, I usually say, either burn the ships, take the leap and go. You might have to live a little frugal for the next couple of years, but you're going to come out of it so much faster for just a short period of sacrifice. You'll be so much further in 5 years, 10 years, so like that. Or I go into the camp, depending on if, again, their experience, their motivations, their risk tolerance. I maybe go to the take of, hey, maybe you should start buying real estate slowly, maybe a couple of duplexes, maybe a small multi, maybe LP in some deals, and get a good, steady cash flow portfolio to replace the W2. Actually tell people to get over like maybe 100 or 125% of what their W2 was before making that jump. So you don't, you quit your W2 and all of a sudden now you don't have health insurance. You don't know how you're gonna pay the mortgage. You don't know how you're gonna pay for your kids' schools and activities and things like that. And then now you're doing this huge life change, and now you have this immense amount of stress, and not good stress, bad stress.
Bad stress.
And then that usually the first crack of failure, because you are going to fail, you are going to stumble. They go back and they go back to W2 and they never try again. I see it all the time, especially with business ownership, a little bit more than in multifamily, because multifamily is a better investment. So I have changed over the last couple of years. I used to be like, burn the ships. You got to go all in, and build the parachute on the way down kind of thing. But now I've learned that that's probably not the best advice. So for everybody. So now I definitely tailor it. So
you're bringing back like traumas of mine with like the health insurance and all this stuff. It was like, I didn't really think about that when I left my job, and was like, oh, there's a lot more expenses that come out of nowhere once you don't have the employer paying for it. So I agree. The 125% is probably a really good idea.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Your taxes are probably going to be a little bit higher or lower, depending on how you structure your companies, and then health insurance and things like that. Marketing. There's all these things that you didn't think about because it wasn't in the book, right? Whatever book you read, it wasn't covered. So that, now that I know better, I've been there, I walked that mile. I definitely can tailor that advice a little bit better to the person.
Speaking of coaching, I don't think a lot of people realize this, but Vince and I were in a meetup in Midland, Michigan together, right? So Tri-City, right? That's where the company name comes from. And every single time Vince would just drop these kind of little nuggets, you don't even think about it, but in itself, just going to meetups, surrounding yourself with good people. Like you've mentioned, hiring VAs. I've gone and done that, right? You've mentioned these, getting a full-time bookkeeper. I've gone and done that. So it's like, you just like mention stuff, and then you get to see the people that have kind of like, oh, that's exactly what I needed in my business and stuff like that. So I want to give a little shout out to you before anything wraps up, because Vince is the man and everything he says is like definitely from experience. You can tell. And, so if he's telling you to not burn the bridges, you probably don't want to burn the bridges. But if he's telling you to burn the bridges because he knows who you are, and I'm one of those people where if I had left the engineering avenue open, this roller coaster journey that we call entrepreneurship, I probably would have wanted to go back. And I think there's definitely doubts along the way. but sticking with it, and I am a burn the boats kind of guy. So it definitely helped out. And now, now it's like, okay, you can kind of get past the chaos of it, stabilize a little bit. Now it's looking much better than it was initially.
I appreciate that. Well, checks in the mail. I appreciate the
Yeah.
Well,
you mentioned I could invest in your next deal. That's what it was, right?
Got it. You mentioned early on, and you just kind of hit on it again, the importance of masterminds, either paid ones or just your local real estate meetups. But I want to focus on a little bit on are you part of any of the paid ones?
I'm in MIH.
Yeah. Okay. So what has, and this is a thing that I try to tell people, even not being a coach for one of those groups, I'm like, you need to understand the difference between like your local real estate meetup with what to expect there, and then what to expect like paying for something. Because a lot of people are like, oh, it's 10 grand or 20 grand. And I'm like, don't even think about it like that. Like, so what has a paid mastermind or one of those groups that have that exclusivity to it? Like, what has that done to your path?
Yeah, I could talk all day about this. And it's like, at the end of the day, it comes down to one thing. It's opportunity cost, right? It's like 10,000. Well, if you're going to make 100,000 on your first deal, what is 10,000? Doesn't really matter at all, right? So for me, paying has twofold. One is the reason you're paying thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars for these different programs and stuff is because the person that is putting together that program, their time is extremely valuable because they have so much accumulated knowledge. So you think they're just going to give that away to everyone for free? No, like that's why they create these programs, so that if you invest in their program, you become better investor, or real estate, you buy more real estate, whatever it may be. So it's very much like if the mastermind was free, right, then I don't even think I'd get as much out of it as it being paid, because I'm also now saying to myself, I am committing to real estate. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and go into it. And so, I was in my 20s. I didn't have much excess capital when I joined the Make It Happen MIH Mastermind. But it was the best thing I had done, because it took, the local meetup was, hey, you get to meet some guys in town and you get to see that people are investing in your market, right? That's what that kind of shows you. It's like, all right, there's players in the market.
Shared resources, things like, hey, you got a contractor. Yes. Yeah, I got
perfect. That's exactly what you get from that. But then once you join a coaching program or a mastermind, you're now getting a network of other investors. And inside that network, you find where you add value, right? I find that I add value by deal sourcing, right? I find deals in my Midwest markets, and then I go to this network and I ask, who wants to partner together? Who wants to help me underwrite deals, whatever it may be. Like, and that's what you're getting. You're getting the ability to buy as many properties as you physically can, because you have all the resources right there. And that's what I think a lot of people miss, is because they just see the price tag and they don't understand the opportunity cost that's associated with it. And, if you can get past that, like there's a few people that, if you can pay money and then if you don't do anything, obviously it's not going to work for you. But if you invest in that and you actually commit to it, I haven't met a single person who hasn't gotten their money back tenfold, 100-fold, 1,000-fold, whatever it may be.
No, absolutely. Yeah. I'd probably put my, Jake and Gino, because I went through that as a student in 2018. Yeah. Like thousands of percent ROI easily. Like, it's insane. One point on that, like there's this weird, I was actually just talking to my partner Duran about this, because we're doing our conference in Hawaii, and we don't sell anything at the conference. Like, we don't sell there's no coaching program or anything like that. Maybe we will in the future, but right now there isn't. And it's like this weird phenomenon that it's like people are questioning, I guess, the value that we can bring, because we're only charging like $350 or whatever for the ticket, and we're giving like literally everything. We like, he's got 20 years business experience, I got 8 years, and we're giving like everything away. And people are like, oh, but then is the value there? Like, what am I going to get? Like, questioning it because it's so cheap. And I'm like, there's a psychological thing there. Like, if we were to charge 10 grand for this weekend, like we would be sold out. Yeah. Like I feel like we'd be sold out. And so I was like, I don't know what that's called, but there's definitely a psychological thing there where people feel like they're paying more, that they're going to get more, even though I give the same amount. Like if somebody asks me to lunch, I'm going to give them the same amount of attention that I would, somebody that just dropped 25 grand in Jake and Gino or something like that. And it's like the same conversations. And that if you just ask me to lunch, and it's just a lot less structure. Obviously they have the structure and everything like that. But as far as me, as my coach, but I see the person that went to coffee with or asked for lunch, like I don't see them do a whole lot of action.
Exactly. Yes.
But then the person that invested, it's like, I see them every quarter. They're like just growing every quarter. So there's a psychological thing there. I don't know what it is, but it's definitely there.
Yeah. There's definitely like an accountability once you invest money, right? You're like, I want to get my return on my investment.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, well, you could get your return on a lower investment, but you just don't have, like, I don't know. I'm the same way, right? So I'm not going to say that I'm better than anyone else. That's just the way it is. The more you invest in something, the more time, effort, it's like you're gonna want to succeed.
Yep, exactly. Well, you said you quit your job at 25. You're now 28. You're trying to hit 300 by 30, so roughly halfway there. So you're halfway through your goal. Where are you at now?
Yeah. So as real estate goes, it's like the exponential growth. So I had done a house hack, quit my job after doing one house hack. I was like, well, that's crazy. It was 2 units, right? Then in the last 2 years, we purchased 4 apartment buildings, and we got up to, they've been smaller multifamily. So we're up to 32 units now, but they've been, awesome deals, right? We've created a ton of equity, wholesaled a bunch as well, because like I said, I quit my job. So I also need some additional capital to fund some of those deals. And now you're seeing at year 3 of doing kind of the direct to seller, which is what we've modeled our business on. And we're doing a ton of volume there. Now we're starting to get these 27 unit properties, 44 unit properties, 55 unit properties we're submitting an offer on shortly. So it's great to see, like I legitimately get to see the exponential growth happening. And so, we're at 32, and then the goal is to be at 100 by 29, and then, go from there. And then by the end of 30, before turning 31, I should have 300. So it's exciting, but it's also very stressful because you can't take the brakes off. Like it's all gas, nonstop. You have to constantly be developing relationships with sellers to try to, and it's multiple months before those even come to fruition a lot of times. So we're starting to hit a lot of those right now. I wish interest rates dropped a little bit while we were hitting a bunch of potential purchases, but it also means that the relationships are even more important right now to find good deals. Absolutely.
So you're at 32 units now, and your goal for the end of the year was 100. Was that right? Or
yes, 100. But I would like to do more than that. And I know the realistic, numbers when it comes to direct to seller, right? You're gonna we have some very strong relationships that are turning into real conversations right now. So if just these couple that we have right now, it'll be 100 by, summer, but we'll be realistic.
I'm sure the market fear and volatility and news cycle that's going on right now is probably motivating people to, move their equity around. So I'm sure that's benefiting you. So how are you structuring these deals?
I have done all joint ventures up to this point, right? So the value that I provide is finding the deal, analyzing the deal, making sure it's a good investment. And then I will essentially go to my network and ask, who wants to be a part of this? And I will take some preferential equity in the property for the finding of the deal. And we also doing the asset management, right? So that's where I'm at, just simply because all the deals I've purchased, Midwest prices, smaller multifamily, those can be done with a couple JV partners. Now, as we start to go after these larger properties, I am most likely going to need to syndicate just as the dollar amounts start to go higher and higher. So
got it. So right now you're bringing the sweat equity, and you're bringing in the equity from your network, probably from those masterminds that we were talking about.
Legitimately, all of my partners, it seems like they're like doctors or lawyers or business owners or something like that want to be in a real estate deal, and maybe they're out of California and that, nothing in their market makes sense or even comes close to penciling out. And then they see me in Indianapolis with a great deal, and they're more than happy to invest there. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're doing a little bit of geo arbitrage on their end, and they're they're leveraging your time, experience, and energy. So it's a good deal on both sides, while they can still focus on whatever they do. If they're a doctor, they're probably already working 80 hours a week. So it's like the last thing they want to do is go manage a 30 unit. Even if they have third party, it's still not passive, and you know that. So, no, that's awesome. So you're doing JVs, growing pretty fast. So your specialty, is the DTS model, the direct to seller model. So tell us what that is, how you built it, and what a typical business cycle, life cycle of a deal looks like.
Yeah. So direct to seller is, I think if you can like define it, you've probably seen this on your flipping side too with direct to seller. It's consistency is the one thing that's going to make you better than everyone else, because at the end of the day, we all technically have access to the same technology and, call systems or CRMs or something or lists of properties for that matter too. Right. But it's like, how am I going to distinguish myself from other people? And it's usually consistency and relationship building. And so when you first get started, I started with like a Google sheet that I was trying to update, and I'd call them and then try to update with notes and stuff like that. And then as you start to scale, you realize that's not a very suitable business model, because it's just not as robust. So then you transition to a CRM. So that's what we did. We did a CRM, we integrated with call and texting platform, and then we just started to scale that. We've probably done, 5,000, 6,000 property leads just through that. And over time, I've just been making it better, right? I read the book Who Not How and realized that, all right, I need to start bringing people into this team, this system, this business, right? So full-time cold caller, and acquisition kind of specialist, 40 hours a week, making calls, sending text messages, talking to potential owners. And then once it's, hey, they might want to sell or something like that, then I have people for those specific markets that then are taking it, that are, MIH members, people with experience with multifamily that can have a conversation to take, hey, you want to sell, to, all right, how are we actually selling? What are your financials? What's the washer dryer situation? All the little details that go into analyzing a multifamily deal, right? And then that allowed me to take a step even further back, run it like a business, automate as much of it as possible, and then just focus on the partnerships that are needed to finance and purchase more properties, right? So that's what we've done over the last 2 years. And then it was actually this year that we started kind of packaging everything that we do for our system, our business, whatever it may be, and built it into kind of something that we can replicate for others. So we started bringing on clients as of January was our launch. And we've done quite a few clients already, which is super exciting. And we just build their direct to seller for them. So it's no stress DTS, and they just take what we're doing. And like I said, you can't replace hustle. So if they're hustling hard, which a lot of them are, they're having a ton of success, and their consistency is paying off, right? If I can hand you the map to do something, and if you don't put in the effort, then it doesn't really matter. So we essentially provide the map, and you get to step in and provide your level of energy and commitment. And that results in a lot of deals or a little off-market deals.
No, I love it. And even if the DT direct seller is not your main, form of deal flow, like I think it should be on everybody's at least one point of their deal flow. You still got your broker relationships, you got to work, and things like that. But a DTS system, like the one you built and set up, like it's so, I guess, easy to systematize. And once you get it set up and running, VAs are everywhere. You can get a good VA, you can get dialers, you can get a CRM, you can get lists from 100 different sources of owners and categorize them by, how much equity they have and how long they've owned it, things like that. If their loan's maturing anytime soon, and just really focus on, a list of, potential motivated sellers. And it's like all automated. Like you do a couple weeks of setting this thing up, and they can just run on essentially autopilot with your assistants running the system, and then they just send you the warm leads or hot leads, and for you to underwrite and make that warm handoff. And
I like to think of brokers as sellers in a sense too, right? So you should be following up with brokers all the time, and you can systematize that as well, right? It's like, all right, I just called a seller. He doesn't want to sell right now. All right, I'll follow up in 2 months or whatever it is, and it's set a follow-up date. Just called a broker, doesn't have anything on his desk right now, but he's got a couple of things in the work. I'm following up in 2 weeks, like 3 weeks. It's like it's the same thing, because at the end of the day, that's what the consistency is. It's following up, being strategic about it. But at the end of the day, if you're just relying on your own brain, doesn't matter how smart you are, their leads are gonna fall through the cracks. You're gonna forget to reach out to a broker, and just you forgetting to reach out to that broker, they may never send you a good deal, an off-market deal ever again. So it's like that's the level of attention to detail that you need, and get a system that helps you do that, right? Don't rely on your own abilities, because that's what's called human error, and it's abundant.
Absolutely. The broker thing is good. We have and that's an easy one. You can just do like you said, I have a reminder even for mine, and I don't even have a sophisticated system that much anymore, because I've kind of handed that off as well. But it used to be every 3 weeks I just have my list of brokers, and I'd have an alert say, hey, call CBRE, call Marcus Millichap, call this guy. And it's just being top of mind, because the biggest difference between commercial real estate and residential real estate, people coming from wholesaling and house flipping, is everything is for sale at a certain price, and everything will be for sale at some time, where it's a lot different than a residential, where you're calling, some 60-year-old lady. She's like, I'll never sell, I'll die in this house. Stop calling me. Right. It's a lot different. Commercials like, sure, what's the price? Or, maybe not right now, call back in 6 months and things like that. So it's a lot different person you're dealing with on the commercial real estate side. So when you are consistent, the fruits of that are going to be way more, than I feel like on the residential side, because everything is for sale at some price and everything's for sale at some time. If you're consistent, if you're that person that's top of mind, whenever that event changes, that life event changes or whatever happens, and you're the last person to talk to them, you're like, oh, I'm gonna call Justin. He's bugged me 6 times this year or whatever. And you're that top of mind person. That's the position you want to be in.
I love that. It's kind of like a game. You can almost, like, if you really want to look at it like a game, just think of it like every broker has a list of people that they like, right? And they're going to send deals to. Every time you're following up and talking to them and reaching out to them, not bugging them, don't bug them. Don't call them every day. You're slowly moving up that list. And then eventually you buy a property that they send you off market. And now you're in the top 10, right? You're someone who can make it happen, right, for them. And it's crazy, because even on the seller side, you mentioned it. Like, for instance, we were talking about opportunity costs earlier too, about joining a mastermind or a coaching program, right? So we sell our system for $1,000. It's going up higher in the future, right? Because that was just our launch price. We just did a deal where we were following up with this owner for 10 months before we got it under contract. Super old school guy. He owned a 12-unit apartment building. He legitimately didn't have email, doesn't check the internet, nothing. So we had to physically drive there multiple times to do the negotiations, get him to sign. We ended up deciding to wholesale that, made a nice little $63,000 profit, right? And that was just one person. And I think we put maybe 10 hours of work total in, 12 hours. And that was across multiple people. That wasn't even just me putting that time. So it's like, you think about it, the opportunity cost of buying something that's already set up and then versus 60, it's like that's 63x on one. Like that I can pay my cold caller for the next 3 years with that profit, right? So I can run my business essentially for another 2.5 years just off of one deal. So I think that's like the cool thing, is that direct seller does take time, but like you can get some massive discounts as a result of it.
Especially when you get it up and running, like long term. And another example, like that more extreme example. So recently I bought a 40-unit deal off market, but which is not that remarkable or anything like that, direct to seller. But what is remarkable is how the relationship with this person. So the very first property I ever bought was a 4-unit here in Midland, and it was just a typical transaction off the MLS, blah, blah, blah. And we bought it, we closed, everything like that. And then I get a Post-it note handed to me 5 years later of, hey, I heard this guy's looking to sell, but I try calling the number, nobody will answer, but here's his name. And then I notice the name. I'm like, hey, that's, I know that name. And I try calling the number, no answer. So I go back to my emails to when I bought the 4 unit, and I called that number because I thought it was the same guy, and he answered. And I was like, hey, Paul, I heard you might have this property. You remember me? I bought this 4 unit off you back in 2018, 2016. And if I remember right, it was an awesome transaction. Everybody was really happy at the closing table. Like everything was really smooth. And and then I also happen to own a 32 unit that your dad built, right downtown. It's a great property. Love the construction, blah, blah. And he remembered me, from that little transaction 4 or 5 years ago. And he had this property. He kind of let me in on a little bit of what the issue was, why he didn't want to bring it to market. And we ended up closing off market. And I walked, like, just based off the appraisal, I walked into like $500,000 in equity, just because he was like, I just want an easy transaction. I know this kid, to me, exactly. He's like, I know this kid, he bought my property back in blah, blah, blah. He owns property down the street. So he already knows what kind of construction and everything like that. Yep. And so it was like a super smooth transaction. And on the outside looking in, it's like, Vince just got a grand slam. He's the luckiest guy alive. But in my head, I'm like, this was just 5 years of just consistent, like kind of grooming, staying in the market, staying in, those conversations of people that know that I buy deals, I buy multifamily, I solve people's problems. If they have a weird situation where they don't want to go to market like this one, Vince is the guy to handle this. And just always being in those kind of conversations, these deals come up. So I look at it a lot differently. It's like one of those, like, preparation meets opportunity, equals luck. To everybody else, that's luck. In my eyes, I was just like, of course this deal came to me. Like I've been grooming this market and all these people for the last 5 years that I'm this person, I'm this investor that solves problems like this. I
love that. That's also why I try to tell people to pick a market and like stick with it. Right. So like, obviously the best market is like your backyard, right? That's a good place because you can like drive and meet people, but it's like, yeah, if you enter into a new market, you're going to know no one, right? But you start building those relationships. Next thing you know, it's like Vince is the guy to go to if you need to sell a property, maybe you have a problem, or you just want an easy transaction or something like that. And people talk. So that's why also don't be an a-hole at any point because that's going to get around, right? Don't try to go to a seller and like scam them or something. Like, just don't be that guy. Yeah. And eventually it'll start to pay off because the branding will kick in, right, over time. And, everyone will talk and stuff like that. And if you have a good reputation in that market that you've farmed for 5+ years, it's going to be pretty cool when you just start buying everything there.
No, that's good. Well, anyway, that was just a little story about the point of what you were making.
Yeah. If I saw your Instagram or your Facebook post, I would have been like, this guy's so lucky. Just get rich quick. That's all you got to do. Invest in real estate and get rich quick. But nobody sees the actual hustle that you put in for that.
Yeah. And in the systems and processes that you build, and consistency, like consistency with direct to seller is all about consistency. Just being that person, either the contacts with the owners and brokers, but just being that person in the market consistently, just kind of comes together. But anyway, moving on. 2.5 years into this thing of your journey here, what are some of the biggest obstacles that you faced and overcame, or didn't overcome, but so far?
Early on, I actually had a horrible partnership that failed. So that was like a great little learning experience. Kind of felt like maybe I don't belong in this real estate world and stuff like that. And that was actually like when I found came across the concept of masterminds, which I think was it in Think and Grow Rich? It's one of those books as far as like the concept. Went searching, found the mastermind, and then that was, I would say, like the obstacles start to go away once you have people who are above you, right, as far as success level that you have access to, right, and you can go ask them questions. You can go to your event in Hawaii and you can catch Vince at a dinner or, at the, for a drink or something like that. And you can ask him a legitimate question that's been costing you hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially in your business. And Vince knows because he's been there, he's done that. So that's
and I have mentors that are above me.
Exactly.
That I can tap into. So it's like this, this never ending chain of, and then they got people above them. So
exactly. So that's like obstacles. I could probably list a million. You could probably list a million, but it's just like, if you want to get through those obstacles, just find people that are doing, where you're trying to get to and leverage them because they're going to be your biggest allies.
So asking the same question in a different way, what is the biggest mistake you've made and what have you learned from it?
Biggest mistake I've made is underestimating how long it's going to take to do renovations and mistiming renovations to land in the off leasing season. So renovate a bunch of units, they take longer than you expected because you just didn't know what you were doing, I guess, which is what happens in real estate. Sometimes you get a little over your skis, but then the worst thing that actually came of it is like, all right, we finished a bunch of units. All right, we finally got it. Now we're in the middle of winter in the Midwest. And it's like, no, that's just a slow leasing season. So those were definitely some pills to swallow. And those were JV deals where, I was technically the one that found that and was running this deal, right? And responsible to the other capital partners. And, there's a level of professionalism there as well. So what we did is we essentially said, all right, we're not going to take distributions till the ship is righted. So that way the cash flow that we do have is going more back to them to kind of, just be like, hey, I understand I messed up, right? We all mess up, but let's own up to it. Let's get better and let's go. But that's like the biggest business related one. I have some personal mistakes, but we all have to go.
That's good. Project
problem child.
What's that?
I was a problem child. So the same concept applies when you get in trouble when you're younger. Own up to your mistakes, take responsibility, and grow from them. Because if not, you're just going to continue down a bad path.
Absolutely. So yeah, project management is definitely it has been a huge topic over the last couple of years because of the labor shortages and the inflation. And I did actually one of the events I was speaking at. I actually asked the host. I wasn't planning on speaking, and I was like, "Hey, I feel like I have a PSA here that needs to be. Can you carve out 30 minutes?" And they let me, and I went up on stage and I did a whole presentation just on like post-COVID project management about how like literally everything you got, like everybody in the crowd, like every model that you're using, every book that you read, everything is probably outdated now. Like these are the new rules in post-COVID project management for how long it's going to take, how much lead time you need for ordering materials. Like, windows took me 6 months to get in, things like that, and how it's affecting budgets and lease ups and everything like that. So absolutely, that has been a big hot topic of mine because I'm the asset manager on my team as well. And I've been dealing with all of that. And it's been a nightmare to try to keep that ship straight when all of these things are happening, with labor shortages. So the contractors got half the team. So it's going to take twice as long, and things like that. So I absolutely understand the pain there. And, how you get creative.
You mentioned in the meetup, you mentioned about just like where you're at with, everyone's always been like, oh, wait, stabilized vacancy 5%, right? And then maybe like 1 or 2% for, concessions, bad debt and stuff. And you're simply like, we're higher than that just because that's just where we're at in the marketplace. And I think that alone is like, that could change kind of, does this deal look good or does this deal not look good for people? And so a lot of people might've been getting into deals that they were too aggressive because of past assumptions. And it's like, that's just not where we're at now. So I hope this 30-minute was recorded because I'd like to get the rundown on that because I think it could help out a lot of people just as far as where we're at in the current marketplace and how to change your underwriting because we're all making our decisions based off of a model, right? a glorified Excel sheet. So if our assumptions are wrong, we're going to have some hard conversations with investors.
Yep, absolutely. And yeah, we've completely kind of reworked our entire project management and then worked backwards to how it affects the underwriting, and lease management, lease generation plans, and execution plans. Ever since, I don't know, probably actually this time last year, maybe a little bit before, maybe toward the end of 2021 is when, like, it started getting pretty real, with like labor shortage, or mid 21. So mid 21 is when it started getting real, of like labor shortages, supply shortages, and just everything was just going to hell. So that's when I was like, all right, there's fundamental changes that don't look like they're going to get better anytime soon. It's not like a couple quarter thing. Like, we need to completely revamp how we underwrite with these new assumptions. And that's definitely saved us in the last couple of deals we've done, by changing our underwriting like that and our expectations. But anyway, short answer is everything's going to take longer and cost more. So underwrite for that. That's the short answer.
And interest rates are going up, so deals are just looking better and better.
Yep. So, all right, let's start wrapping up. I just realized we've been over an hour, so it's going to be fun. But let's wrap up to the I guess last bit of comments here, and then we'll get into the fire round. So, what are you working on now? What do you have coming up? And do you have anything for our listeners?
Yeah, working on actually something I reached out to you about. We have a light tech property, low income housing tax credit property that we are looking to go alongside the seller, direct to seller, and take it out of the rent restriction under the tax credit section 42, which involves a 1-year process of essentially qualified contract. I won't go too much in the details, but it gets to be sold to someone else if they want to buy it. But usually that buy price is much higher than anyone's ever going to pay for the property. And at that point, then you go into a seasoning period, decontrol period, or whatever, sunset or something like along those lines of, you can start bringing it to market rent. So we're really excited about that project. This is one that we've been building a relationship with. We sent them mugs, right, with their company name on it. Like, we've done everything. I've sat down with her son, like all kinds, just talking about their retirement plan and seeing how we can be the person to help them do that, right? And we've shared about, like, she just texted me how, where'd you guys get into residency program at? Like, that's the level of relationship you start having with these people, where she's asking about my significant other. So we're really excited about that. On top of that, we have some other relationships, 40 some unit and 30 some unit, but I don't like talking about those because I don't want to jinx it. And that's just the world that we live in. But those are great relationships. And then on the side, we've started helping a lot of people with direct to seller, just because of the massive discount potential. Everyone seems to be talking about direct to seller, but no one really knows what to do. So we just launched that. And if anyone wants to check that out, nostressdts.com. Keep it fun and catchy for you guys. That should, by the time this airs, that website should be up and live, and you guys can sign up there. But yeah, all things direct to seller is what we're working on right now.
No, it's a good tool to have in the tool belt, especially with this market right now, where financing is not the best, with rates going up every couple of weeks. You need to have a direct to seller arrow in your quiver for another. I don't know whether that is a metaphor, but it's definitely something as a real estate investor you need to have, and that's mainly what it is, right? You just have to learn all these different tools: direct to seller, master lease options, seller financing, JV, syndications. All these are just arrows or tools in your tool belt to take down deals. The more of these things you can put in your tool belt, the more lethal you're going to be as a real estate investor.
Yeah, you told me about master lease options at one of the meetups, and we just put an LOI in today for master lease. It was option 1 is a conventional purchase. Option 2 is a master lease option for a higher price. So we'll see what they choose.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And when I did a couple now, but the first one is I just read a book on it, And I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I just went out because I wanted to try it. So I found a pretty small property. It was like 200 grand, commercial property here in Michigan. And I was like, I'm going to try a master lease option. Like the worst that's going to happen, like 200 grand. I'm like, I'm not going to be bankrupt over if this deal goes south. But if I get it right, or what I'll learn, it's kind of like a little sandbox property. Like, I can learn the concept. I can learn how to do a deal like this. But it's, a 200 grand deal. I ended up refinancing out and executing the option at I think it appraised for 350. So I ended up burying it and now I have a commercial property, 0 down. But more importantly is now I have that arrow in my quiver. I have the tool in my tool belt. So whenever I see a master lease option potential, I know how to do it. Like I got that tool forever now.
I want to do one so bad for that exact reason. It's like, I've read about it. I've researched way too much about it. Let's do one, right? Because you're never going to learn as much as taking action on something.
Yeah. And I just found a small property and I was like, well, this is going to be the one that I test on. So it's great. All right. Fire round. So same questions we ask everybody mostly. Sometimes I change it up, but first thing that comes to mind. Ready? What is the best book you recommend other than Rich Dad Poor Dad?
So if you're a newbie, go from Rich Dad Poor Dad and go to like any of the Bigger Pockets books, rental properties, management or whatever. If you're much further
right here, all these
right there. Yeah. I can see them up there.
Yeah. These are all bigger.
If you're much further along, Who Not How I mentioned earlier is fantastic. Even if you're not even in real estate, just like in general, just figure out how to automate and delegate your life and, spend more time with your family or something. It's great. So definitely a good read.
Love it. What is your superpower?
I want to say deal finding, but it's really, if you want to break that down, it's relationship building. And that, deal finding, consistency, relationship building all go to hand in hand. And that's what we've done. But I love going to events. Your Hawaii event is a good one. Go out to Hawaii, hang out with Vince, right? Get to meet people in person because that's how you form partnerships. That's how you get a bunch of nuggets and help your business grow. So relationship building is very important and is something that we should all be doing.
Absolutely. And I would also say, that building systems is probably one of your superpowers as well. As you had built
engineering
DTS and you're selling it and you're an engineer, you're probably hardwired to always think about systematizing, getting things as efficient and as effective as possible. And I think to me, as an outsider looking in, I would say that would be one of your superpowers as well. What is the biggest lesson you've learned over your career?
Oh my gosh. Man, you should have sent this to me earlier. I would say like, so we mentioned this earlier and I want to go back to it. Like your example of like, hey, this guy came back to me 5 years later. I think the biggest lesson you need to realize is that like you are always being watched, whether you know it or not. Right. So don't just be a good person, be a good investor. And just, if you make mistakes, own up to them, get better. But like anytime you're trying to sweep stuff under the rug and not tell your investors something like that, that's where you're going to go wrong. And then it's just going to be, you're going to be in a huge hole you're never going to be able to come out of. So it's like, understand relationship, life, whatever you do is going to have ups and it's going to have downs. Right. And so when you're in those downs, don't be an a-hole. Don't be, whatever. Just be a good person, admit to them, get through them, get better, grow, and then you're going to end up having a long career in whatever you do. And so that's a very important thing. And I'm glad you mentioned an example of it earlier because I've seen that in myself. I've seen that with even partners that I've dealt with in the past.
For the busy working professional who's working towards financial freedom, what is your last tip or advice you have for them?
Keep listening to this podcast and go to Hawaii. Depending on the timing, I might actually be there as well because you haven't heard the news yet, but we're moving to Orlando, Florida.
Oh, so
nice. We were in Michigan, in the cold tundra of Michigan. Now we're going back to Florida. So depending on the move, if it conflicts, I might not make it to Hawaii, but if it doesn't conflict, go there because at the end of the day, being around like-minded people in person in an event that's outside of your normal surroundings is where you will excel And I think it's a great investment to go to in-person events because it changes your mindset. You come back with just this energy and this desire to just change something, Like sometimes you don't know exactly what it is, just be better. But yeah, so that's what I'd say is anytime you can get to an in-person event, do it.
Awesome. Well, I don't think I have to plug my event. So you've done it enough, and I appreciate that. But for those listening, it is the Hawaii Millionaire Mindset, June 29th to July 1st. We're having it on the Big Island. Check it out, the Hawaii Millionaire Mindset. We have our own website and everything like that, so you can Google it, and we'll love to see you out there. But yeah, you hit it nail on the head. There's kind of like that same psychological thing where I talk about like people, they invest in a product or a mastermind or a coach, like they just seem to excel more. Like there's the same thing about going to an in-person event when it comes to the energy. Like I don't know what it is, but you always just come back like you're just full of energy and you're ready to just like take on the next like couple months. So it's like you just have to, if you're smart, you would like strategically do it like one of these in-person events, like every quarter, preferably at a different city. That way it's like you're getting like your gas tank recharged every quarter to just power through the next couple months. And there's this energy that you get and you come back with that it's hard to explain, but it's there and it's a real thing. And absolutely do that.
Yeah, there's times where I'm like, why am I like, where's all my energy? Like I'm not really like performing very well. I'm like, when's the last time I went to an in-person event? Oh, 4 months ago. Okay, let's go to one. And then you just come back just ready to take on the world.
Yep.
So
especially if you do it at someplace awesome, like like an
some
Austin
awesome island like Hawaii.
Yeah, like Hawaii or like an Austin or like a Orlando or Tampa or something like that. Miami, like do an awesome place like that. Do some fun, do some work, do some networking. It's some good stuff. So this has been an awesome show. One of my favorites I've done in a long time. I know it's been impromptu too. It was like 2 days ago or something. I reached out. I was like, hey, let's do a show. So it's awesome you're able to jump on so fast. So for anybody that wants to reach out to you, how can they get a hold of you?
Yep. Instagram, Facebook, Cashflow Cowboy. So that should be an easy one to remember. And then, anyone who is looking to even just learn a little bit more about direct to seller, by the time this airs, there's a good chance the website's live. So no stress, DTS.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. It's been an outstanding show.